Good morning. This is the third in a five-part series, actually, five-part series of talks I'm doing this week around the spatial industry and business creativity within the industry that I know and love. Yesterday, I spoke about imagination and creativity, and I used Ken Robinson, one of his talks, to illustrate what I mean by the importance of what creativity is and how creativity can give organizations new perspectives, new approaches, and new ways of thinking, new ways of doing things. So, really important. The second talk I did yesterday was on purpose and why. And that was really that Simon Sinek notion of starting with why. And he gave a really good example of how Apple really start with their core central theme about what they're about and build out from that. So they never describe what they do and how they do it. They start with their why. So two really fundamental things, I think. Today, I'm going to talk very briefly around this whole concept of innovation, particularly around the startup mentality. And I'm going to use a short clip of a video, which is an interview with Clayton Christensen, who unfortunately is another person like Ken Robinson that's no longer with us, but a really important person in this space. And he wrote a lot about disruptive innovation and sort of a lean startup mentality. I've got a book here. Actually, he didn't write it, but these are the type of books that came from the work of Christensen and others, really having that innovator's mentality, that startup approach to things. So let me play the video very briefly, and then I'll come in and do a little talk after that.
Hello, I'm 𝐦𝐚𝐝𝐬. Welcome to The Idea. My guest today is Professor Clayton Christensen. Clay, welcome.
Oh, thanks, Des.
What exactly is disruptive innovation? Explain it.
A disruptive innovation is not a breakthrough innovation that makes good products a lot better. But it has a very specific definition, and that is it transforms a product that historically was so expensive and complicated that only a few people with a lot of money and a lot of skill had access to it. A disruptive innovation makes it so much more affordable and accessible that a much larger population have access to it.
So give us an example of this. I mean, most people are familiar with the computer industry and how that's developed. Perhaps you can use that as an example.
Yeah, so at the beginning, the first manifestation of digital technology was a mainframe computer. It cost several $1 million to buy, and it took years to be trained to operate these things. And so that meant that the largest corporations and the largest universities could have one, you know. And so we had to take our problem to the center where the experts solved it for us. But then there's a sequence of innovations from the mainframe to a mini, to a desktop, to a laptop, and now to a smartphone that has democratized technology to the point that everybody has access to it around the world. And we are much better off. It was very hard, though, for the pioneers of the industry to catch these new waves. Most of those were created and dominated by new companies.
So that was a very short snippet of an interview with Clayton Christensen. He's talking about disruptive innovation, which is most of the time what innovation is. We don't generally come up with something brand new. And he's really talking about access to something that in the past was not accessible. I think it's really pertinent to our industry. The geospatial industry, GIS, remote sensing, has really been used and targeted at a very small group. It's now becoming a much broader group that's interested in this technology and this data. The question that we've got as an industry is how do we bring it to that wider audience? And it's really centered around having a market-centric focus. We've been guilty, as many technology-centric industries have been, of focusing on the data and the technology themselves and not on the problem we're trying to solve. And too often I have people approach me and talk to me about a solution looking for a problem. If we build it, there will come type mentality. More on that in future talks, but it's critical that we're market-led. And what Clayton Christensen talks about there is really the nirvana that we're looking to get to, is where we can actually bring the data and the technology we know, I'm repeating myself here, to that much wider audience, not to the niche that we've served in the past. So there's a journey there. I encourage everybody, I could have chosen other folks to include in this particular talk, but the lean startup mentality is critical here. This ideation, this process of validation with customers, this building of proof of concepts and MVPs and iterating around that until you arrive at a place where you can take that next step. So really critical stuff, something that we in the spatial industry are guilty of doing poorly. I encourage you to read some of the stuff that Clayton Christensen's written, some of the videos he's done, and also to really look hard at the whole lean startup writings on that whole lean startup world. Really critical stuff. I'll advance this talk in the two conversations I've got coming up, which is really the frameworks around how we operate within this market-focused approach that we need to be taking. So thanks for watching today. More to come in the next couple of days.